We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, you start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
Hello everybody, this video today is on the subject of three-dimensional motion pictures. Since the early 80s, I have been fascinated with the original three-dimensional process, and I'm referring to analog. If you know what analog is, it's the red and green or red and blue glasses. I mean the authentic originals. The pathetic Blu-ray 3D process that they're now marketing, I've never totally been impressed with it since buying an LG high-definition 3D television set. When I first saw 3D Blu-ray, I was at Best Buy. I saw them doing an actual promotional, and it was showing shots of an aquarium. And I'm telling you, when I put their glasses on, I was just blown away of how real it looked. How much three-dimension came out of the screen. Well, every film I've found on Blu-ray since that time has fallen totally short of what I expected. Now, the video I'm going to do is to kind of explain to you some things about who is the primary three-dimensional restoration company that's out there today. I'm going to refer now to The Mask. The Mask is totally analog. This is not Blu-ray. They have marketed other films that were in 3D, but only The Mask itself is analog 3D. It has the red and the blue glasses. And on the back of the video, it gave you an overview of different things about how analog has progressed over the years, how when the 80s came around, there was such a massive interest in three-dimensional motion pictures that they started airing Gorilla at Large. They aired The Revenge of the Creature. I was lucky enough, I got a copy of that when they aired it back in the 90s. And it's been a joke since then with 3D as far as what they're marketing now. Anybody remembers the first 3D movies they made was Monster vs. Alien. And then they did Meatballs with, or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And those were the first 3D movies they ever made as far as the millennial, right now, after 2000. And to me, it's a joke to look at how 3D then, with analog, was so much more believable and realistic. And now today, you have Blu-ray 3D, and it's like, it's a gimmick. They release these things hoping people will buy them under the assumption that the process will either have been improved or they've maybe made advancements to how it looks on the screen. And folks, I'm sorry to say this, it does not look any better after all the time they've had to try to revamp and upgrade the process as far as how it looks. They use a process where it kind of overlaps an image together, and then you're able to watch the 3D program based on using standard polarized glasses. And it doesn't matter how much you strengthen the signal on your television to increase the perception of 3D, it doesn't change anything. It still doesn't pop out of the screen at you. It still has a very flat, two-dimensional appearance, because though there is some elements of 3D there that looks good, the majority of it doesn't look 3D, period. Another film that the company that I'm referring to is called Kino Lorper. They are the primary three-dimensional company that is marketing all these three-dimensional films. Now, The Stewardesses is a 3D film, and it was marketed back in the early teens, back in 2009, by Cebu Cat Productions. This is analog. This is not Blu-ray. Analog is the best process that's ever been marketed. This is what I'm talking about when I say 3D glasses. These. Red, blue. This is the best process for analog because it's how the film originally was made. And when they sit there and they try to tell you, oh, we've restored this 3D process with the left and the right negatives, and now it looks really three-dimensional on Blu-ray. That's a lie. It doesn't look any better. It doesn't look any more stereoscopic than it was before they changed everything. I say this to Kino Lorper. Don't make any more 3D releases unless it's in the original analog process. Now, y'all are going to say, well, nah, they can't do that. It's too expensive. When I watched The Mask, there's a promo on this. And what they did is they did an overview of all the other titles that they own. And guess what? The promo was shown in analog. That's right. They did it in analog. They didn't do it in Blu-ray. And when I saw that, I thought, that's terrific. They're marketing these things in analog. Wrong. Because everything I've found since seeing The Mask has been Blu-ray 3D. In other words, Kino doesn't think it's worth their time to release anything else in analog of these original 3D programs or these motion pictures, because to them they think people don't have old analog televisions, and that to them is the only way that it would ever look three-dimensional. Spy Kids 3D was also marketed on Blu-ray, and it was done with this pathetic 3D process they're now using. They did actually market it though on regular DVD, and it was in analog. So you can't say the market isn't there anymore for people to watch or want to see analog motion pictures, because they did Spy Kids 3D, they did at least a limited market of three-dimensional films in analog, but only through regular DVD releases. They haven't done them on Blu-ray. Now, wouldn't it be interesting to see if they could release a Blu-ray of an analog movie, and then they wouldn't be able to use that term Blu-ray 3D, because it would not use your television's three-dimensional function in order to make it look that way, because it doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't do anything. Now these are some of the other titles that Kino has marketed. This is Javaro 3D. This is Blu-ray. Stinks. Doesn't have any three-dimensional process. And this one is unique because when they filmed it, it used points of analysis references. In other words, when they did the 3D movie, they took various places in the shot and did the pictures in different angles so that it looked more three-dimensional. And all they can do now is brag, oh, we've reassigned all of these to the Blu-ray process. It doesn't work. So it's like, you're wasting our money and our time telling us these things are better, because they're not better. They're worse. This is another one. This is called September Storm. Now, I tried to find this on DVD, and I did. It's not in 3D. Only Blu-ray 3D is what they're marketing. And Kino Lorber is the company. I'm going to zoom in on their name so you can see it. See, it says... It just says Kino Lorber. That's what it says. And I've spent quite a bit of money on these things, and I keep thinking that maybe they're marketing some of these films in analog through Blu-ray, since they figure Blu-ray is the only thing people watch now. But they are not putting these things with analog. That's another thing that does not make sense. If you're going to spend this much money to market something, give those who want to see the analog process as it originally was filmed, let them see that as an option on the Blu-ray. And they aren't doing that. The last one, this is the first one that I saw that Kino was making. And it's actually, all of these say 3D film archives. So maybe it's not just Kino who's doing this. They're all getting it. Well, see, this one says Kino Lorber too. This is called GOG. What is GOG? GOG is, it was a set of 2 machines, and the other one was called Magog. And of course, this is from the Bible. And anyway, it was filmed in 3D. But again, it was originally filmed in analog. But again, Kino Lorber will not market these films in analog, period. But yet, it's not a problem for them to market a promotional that shows you these ads and trailers in analog. In other words, they have the choice to choose which format they're going to use, but they're not giving you, the customer, the choice to decide which one you want to see. And all of my searches have coming up, or are coming up blank. Now, there is one film I bought, and I turned it back in to Best Buy. It's called The Maze. The Maze is the first trailer in this promotion that Kino released about all the other films, and it was in the original analog. And it's not something where they took the print from like something off film or whatever. They restored the trailer in its original analog format, and then they showed it. And this is what they did with the whole promo. It lasts maybe about, not even 8 minutes, maybe 7 or 6 minutes. And that's what compelled me to want to find all these other 3D films that Kino owns, because I figured they're all going to be in analog. And they weren't. Best Buy showed on their ads on their webpage that The Maze was in 3D, and that's the regular DVD release. It was not in 3D. It was a 2D movie, and you had no option on the screen to switch it to analog if you wanted to. So it is frustrating to see them advertise something and then they don't come through with it. But it's even more frustrating to think that they're going to spend the millions of dollars they've already spent to release these original analog 3D movies and not offer the viewer the choice to decide if they wanted to see it in analog or Blu-ray 3D. And if they can't offer you those two choices. I would say to Kino Lorber, I would say to anybody, to 3D film archives, don't use Blu-ray 3D as the only option. Go back, if you're restoring these films, and I know you're doing them in analog because you did it on The Mask. You've done it, I know, on the Stewardesses, because I think Kino Lorber got this particular rights to the Stewardesses. And it's probably an analog. I know it's got to be an analog. This was. And maybe they did all this to kind of heighten people's interest, and then they figured, that's it, folks. We're not going to do any more analog. All the rest of them are going to be Blu-ray. And that's why I'm doing the video, to say to Kino Lorber, to anybody who is a fan of three-dimensional films, write to them, contact them any way you can, and tell them analog is the only choice of a three-dimensional film, because number one, it's how it originally was filmed, and number two, it's what people would choose to use because it's more nostalgic. The process was so much more realistic than it is as far as what Blu-ray does with it now. And in my book, it's fraud for you to advertise a promotional for your films and say, this is what it's going to look like, because they showed it all in analog just for that promo. But none of the other films are being released in the analog format. So this is something I've been wanting to bring up on YouTube, because it's a sad scenario where they're taking the kind of time they are making to restore these films, but they are not offering people analog, because analog is the original process for these motion pictures. I can remember when I first saw The Mask, it was on television, and I think it's the very first time after Gorilla at Large came out. It was the first film I'd ever seen with the kinds of realistic graphics. I mean, the stuff just shot off the screen at you. And then I thought, well, man, The Mask is so good as an analog film. Gorilla at Large, I think they were just doing that to promote three-dimensional television, because it created a craze of motion pictures in the 80s. If you remember Jaws 3D, they came out with that. They made Amityville 3D. All of these were in the black dark glasses, the polarization process. In a lot of ways, that is actually what our high-definition televisions are. But they failed in creating a type of television and a player that actually recreates that kind of depth in the picture. And anybody who has a 3D TV can tell you the process depends, primarily it depends on your player. It depends on the material you're playing too, because if the process isn't fine-tuned, you'll not get any stereoscopic perceptions of anything you're watching. And I bought a Sony 3D DVD player because I wanted to see the process for myself. And yes, I am disappointed because of what I've been watching of these films, because they don't recreate 3D like the original analog. But it's something I hope that maybe Kino will see this video someday, and they'll reevaluate whether they should be offering people the analog process. I got September Storm because I kept thinking, this one is probably going to be done in analog, because they did Spy Kids 3D, and it was in analog. Another film I just realized, I just remember this, Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which was actually made by the same company, it was in analog. Because they knew 3D is out there, it's going to come back, so they introduced everybody to analog again. Then after that, that's when all the other films started being marketed in the polarized dark glasses again, like they did in the 80s. So it's like it was a 30-year time frame between when they were doing 3D and then when they came back and started it over. during the Super Bowl about, it's been 10 years ago. They promoted Monsters vs. Aliens during the Super Bowl. And if anybody remembers, True 3D marketed glasses that were yellow and blue, very much like the analog glasses. And when they did the promo, it looked pretty good because it was very much like the original 3D analog that we all remember back when they were doing the 80s Gorilla at Large on television. I emailed True 3D after that promo, and they told me, we don't know if the studio is going to use our process when they do the movie. But they said if they do use it, she said, those glasses will work on the film. And then when they marketed Monsters vs. Aliens and it was polarized, I said, well, there goes that chance. So then I contacted True 3D again. I said, well, are y'all going to market it on DVD? And they said, no, apparently the company felt that they wanted to use this other process, and so they never used it on anything else. They also aired an episode of Chuck during that time. It was a promotional about their upcoming episode, and it was in 3D as well. And they kept saying, oh, buy your 3D or get your 3D glasses for free at all these different retailers. Kroger was giving them away free. It was in a big box. And I thought, this is great. This is another version of analog they're going to come out with. It was never used again after that. After the Super Bowl aired, they never again used that yellow and blue analog glasses again. So, folks, this is a video of request. Everybody who sees the video, who are fans of 3D, please reach out to Kino Lorber. Ask them, market movies in analog. Don't market it just in Blu-ray 3D. Because there are two examples I've just shown you that they did actually market them in analog. The Stewardesses, and The Mask. So if they can do that for these two films on DVD, they still make DVDs. They don't just make Blu-rays. And I'd say try to convince them of the value of releasing more of the titles, especially like The Maze. You know they already did it in analog because they did it in that promo. They can do it again. If enough people ask them, they'll do it. So I appreciate y'all watching this video because I'm an avid fan of 3D analog because of it just has so much more depth to the image than anything they're doing with this Blu-ray 3D stuff today. It doesn't even compare. And one film that'll probably never be marketed, anybody remember Bwana Devil? That was the first motion picture in 3D. You can find some two-dimensional copies that starred Robert Stack on eBay, but they'll never market or actually list it as Bwana Devil. You'll have to do sort of like a search for their description, and then you can find it. I did get a copy of Bwana Devil. It was not in 3D. They did show three-dimensional trailer for Bwana Devil in that promotional I saw. And I was like, well, this proves that analog is still something they can make from those original films and restore them. But they are choosing not to do that with these films they're marketing. They are only offering the polarized glasses because they figure people only have high-definition TVs now. Analog won't work on those kind of TVs. That's not true. High definition is just a better pixel type of screen, but it doesn't change the fact that analog still can work on any television you use if they'll use that process. Another one is called natural vision, which means you don't have to adjust the tuning on your television to have that test screen, you know, part blue, part white. They don't need to do any of that stuff because natural vision was intended only to be a three-dimensional television program anybody could watch, and you wouldn't have to adjust anything on your television because that's why they called it natural vision. That was Hondo, by the way. Natural vision was very well known for the movie Hondo that was made in 1953. They've only aired that one time in the past 25 years. The last time they aired Hondo They still are on analog television, and the Leukemia Society of America sponsored it. And guess who owns the 3D version of John Wayne's motion picture? His family. The estate of John Wayne are the only ones that own Hondo in the original analog format. Nobody else has it. Yeah, they've marketed it since then, but it's only been in 2D, not 3D. So maybe through this video, some of these companies might get the hint. Release them in analog. Let's see what happens. I guarantee you, you'll get a lot more sales than what you're getting right now with this pathetic excuse called Blu-ray. It doesn't work as far as 3D is concerned because there's no depth to it. I'm totally disappointed with what I spent all my money to buy because I know now there is nothing else you really can depend on except the original analog that they used when they first filmed these motion pictures. So thank you for watching, and please leave comments. Tell me things you want to say about what motion pictures you might have found recently that are still analog. I'd love to find out where they're selling them because I'd like to see them myself. So, thanks.
His name is Omran Daknesh, just 5 years old, and his feet barely hung over the edge of a seat in an ambulance. Dazed, he didn't cry as he wiped away blood and the dust from a building that collapsed around him in an airstrike. His silence somehow reminded the world today of its silence in the face of the atrocities in Aleppo. Omran was pulled out alive Wednesday, 5 other children died when the building they were in was hit during the relentless Syrian-Russian offensive on rebel-held areas in Aleppo. The image of Omran's face spread like wildfire on the internet. One tweet called him the real representative of the Syrian people.
Stop killing Syrian innocent people, civilian. Our children need to live in peace.
The doctor who treated Omran said today there were many more severe cases no one is paying attention to.
We need to protect our hospital, our doctors, our medical workers from airstrike.
Omran is recovering. His family now wants to escape. The same choice another boy's family made a year ago, Aylan Kurdi, whose body washed up on a beach. He too was a symbol of Syria's youngest victims. Now there's a new one. Tomorrow there may be another. Richard Engel, NBC News.
They've reported from around the world, challenged the powerful, and they bring all of this to every story that breaks.
We've got breaking news, and it's good news.
And touches your heart.
How do you even say thank you? Thank you is not big enough.
I made this.
The images shocked the world. Relentless bombings. Stunned survivors.
Hai, malah saya yang berubah. Hai, ambil cuti. Dasar.